Okay, hello again. So in this video, we're going to go over Bootstrap. We'll talk about what it is. Well, what is it? What is Bootstrap? Bootstrap is a open source framework or library that you can use to build websites. So it includes both HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and a bunch of components that you can use, and also grid systems, all kinds of things that you can use to make a website. Originally, it was I think a project of Twitter, and they kind of used it for prototyping, and then they kind of released it, and it's free to use, and you can download it and use it, or you can just link to it and use it. And it makes a lot of things. They've kind of covered all the bases as far as what you can do with it, and we'll kind of go over that. Alternatives. So what are the alternatives to Bootstrap? Well, probably the most popular one is going to be Foundation. So Foundation is from Zurb, and they're actually local, I think. Both of these are local, I believe. But they used to kind of leapfrog each other as far as like which one was better or which one people liked. But Foundation is another option. So there's more than Bootstrap, but Bootstrap is probably the most well-known. Used to be a few years ago when a startup was starting up, they would say just bootstrap it. And they were talking about just making a website for it, and you had a company, right? If you had a website and you just use Bootstrap to make your website, you had a company, and you could get lots of money and get rich, and then buy your Tesla and stuff. Is that how it works? I don't know. Anyway, we'll talk about how to set it up. We'll talk about linking to it so you don't have to download it using a CDN or a content delivery network. We'll start with the starter page. So this is what we're actually going to make, is this simple page here, pretty simple anyway, with a navigation bar at the top, and a slideshow here in the middle, so it does include components like slideshows and things. And then we'll play with the grid system a little bit just to see how you can do different widths of columns. And it is responsive as well, so you see if I resize it, it goes to one column here to 3 columns, and it does it at different times because you can do that with Bootstrap. You can change when the changes happen, and you can also see it has responsive navigation kind of built in. So I click on the little hamburger there, right, and then it opens up, or if I get wide enough, it becomes a horizontal nav bar. So that's what we're going to make. So we'll start with the starter page. We'll look at some of the components. We'll add navigation. We'll add the slideshow. We'll talk a little bit about using the grid, at least introduction. And then we'll also say, look at how you customize it, because it has its own default styles, kind of. So if you want to change some of those styles, you will look at how to do that a little bit. And yeah, one of the issues, I guess, with Bootstrap is if you don't do anything to the styles or the default look of it, it's going to say, people are going to say, hey, that was made with Bootstrap. You're just using Bootstrap. So you can definitely customize it if you want. So let's go ahead and get started. So if you go to getbootstrap.com or just look up Bootstrap, you'll end up on this page. And then you can click on Get Started right here. So you could download it, but we're actually going to use the CDN version, which is the online version. There's lots of ways to use this. You can download it in different versions and custom versions and everything, but we're just going to go kind of the quickie mode here. So we're going to link to the CDN, the actual files are here, but we have a template down the page, so we'll just use that. So it talks about the JavaScript and the CSS, how to link that. But there's a starter template here, and we're going to be doing this quite a bit. So one of the good things about Bootstrap is they have a lot of kind of starter code for you. They just kind of plop in and then customize, and you're good to go. So once you find this starter template section on the Getting Started page, you just click Copy here. And then we're going to go over to brackets, and I have a folder probably for you called Bootstrap site or something like that, and it's completely empty. There's nothing in it. So I'm just going to make a new file, a new blank file, and paste. And let me make that a little bit easier to see there. So I pasted that in, and I'm going to save that file, and I'll just call it Bootstrap1 or something. And I spelled Bootstrap wrong. That is a bad start. Bootstrap1.html. And I'll save it in my Bootstrap site folder right there. Okay, so save. And then as I save it, you get the syntax coloring, so you know you're kind of working on a website here. Let me go ahead and hide the sidebar. So let's look at this just for a second real quick. It's got the meta tag for mobile on it. So it's mobile, definitely mobile capable. It's kind of what it's made for, responsive design. Here's the link to the actual Bootstrap CDN. So that is linking to an external site at StackPath, I think it's called. And that's where the page is downloading the Bootstrap files itself from. And then you've got some JavaScript stuff in here. You've got, but not much. You just have a body here, and all it says is hello world. If we look at this page, it's super exciting. Looks like that, right? Typical hello world programmer thing. So let me move this over here. And then we'll go ahead and add some stuff. So we set it up, we linked it, we have a starter page. Let's look at some of the components. So if you go back here to, well, no, I'm gonna make this bigger, it's easier to see here. And blow this up for you guys. So on the side here, you can see everything that kind of Bootstrap has, and they have really good documentation. So we're in the documentation section, where the getting started page was. But you've also got a layout section. Under there, you can find information about the grid, which we'll use in a little bit, how it works, and different ways to set it up. I'm not gonna lie to you, there's 100 different ways to do things now, and it's supposed to be flexible, right? But it can be a little complicated as far as how the grid works. But thankfully, they give you all this code and show you what it looks like so that you can kind of figure out what you want to do and when you want it to happen. But there is a lot of flexibility to it, which adds a little bit of excitement. There's a content section where it talks about typography. You can change all the global settings or what they look like. Here's what the headings look like, stuff like that. You can also see, if I go to components, I'm just jumping around. Obviously, there's a ton of stuff in here. Under components, you'll see all kinds of things you can add, like alerts, breadcrumb navigation, buttons. All kinds of buttons are in there. Button groups of buttons together. Looks like that, right? Let's see, carousel. We're going to use carousel a little in a minute, but you can put in carousels, and the JavaScript is included, so you can do a slideshow or a carousel. You can do collapsing containers. So here is some collapsing containers, right? Sort of accordion functionality. You can do obviously drop-down menus. I think you probably get the idea that you can do almost anything as far as interface stuff goes here. Also nav bars. So obviously we can do nav bars and things, and there's all the code for some of that. I know I'm skipping right through this, but there's weird things like Jumbotron, which you could use to make a big sort of hero box at the top of your page, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, that's probably good. So let's go ahead and add some navigation. So I'm gonna go to where it says navs, and you can see the basic navigation stuff. So here's a basic navigation bar, and different options for that, available styles, all kinds of things. But we're actually gonna go to the nav bar link right below that. So it says navs and then nav bar. So click on nav bar. And I'm gonna scroll down. So here is a nav bar that has kind of everything in it. Search button, drop down, everything. That one's probably got a little too much for our purposes. So I'm gonna go down and look for just kind of a basic nav bar with a drop down though, so you can see the drop down working. Here we go. So here's one that has this is like your logo, right? And it's got 4 links in it, and it's got a little drop down in it. So that one, I like that one. I like it. Hope you like it too. So I'm going to click on copy right here where it says copy to clipboard, copy that. And I'm going to go back to my page. And I did forget one thing. Did I forget one thing? Yes, I did. So let's go back to layout just for a second here. And I wanted to talk about the containers, because you kind of do have to start with a default container. And it is this. So it has 2 kinds of basically containers, and we call them wrappers a lot, right? But here is the div class equals container. That is the basic container, and what it will do, it will become responsive and snap to at breakpoints, it'll snap to different sizes. So that's the basic container. Everything pretty much goes inside of there. And then but you can also do a fluid container, which will resize all the time and is always the entire width of the viewport. So this one will change to different sizes, and this one will always be full width of the viewport. So we're actually going to use, and here's some of the breakpoints as well. So these are some of the breakpoints that Bootstrap uses for small devices, for tablets, desktops, etc. So the same kind of stuff that we've been doing already with responsive design and media queries. So all I have to do to start this up, I don't think there's a sample code now. All I have to do to start this up is add this, I'm going to add the regular container, this right here. I can copy that, or I could type it, but I'll just copy it. So I'm going to go here, and then inside the body, I'm going to put that in. And that's it. So this is the main container for everything, pretty much the wrapper. And then I'll take my heading that says Hello World, and I will put that where it says Content for now. And instead of Hello World, let's say Hello Bootstrap. Yeah, there we go. Hello Bootstrap. So now if I look at this page, let's see if it changed. Yeah, there we go. So now you can see that the page, you see how it kind of snaps to different widths? So when I get this far out, it's that wide, and then it'll kind of snap there, and it'll snap there, and then it'll snap one more time, and it'll become full width as you get down, down to the minimum width. So that is the main sort of responsive container. The other one that you need to remember that we're going to use a little bit is called a row, and you'll see that when we do the grid, when we start adding the grid. But let's add the navigation first. Sorry, I'm kind of making you guys dizzy with moving these windows around. So now we can go add the navigation. I wanted to get that navigation inside the container so it didn't cause you problems. Okay, so I'm going to go to components again on the left side here, and then I'm going to go down to navbar. And then I'm going to go down to that nav bar that I liked. Sorry, I'm going to speed scroll you. Don't get sick. Sorry, I couldn't find it because I actually was too narrow. So that's one of the tricky things is the samples inside of the Bootstrap documentation are themselves responsive. So if I resize my window is too small. I'm like, where's all the nav bars? So the one I was looking for was this one. But if I start to resize, see, that's it becomes the responsive one. That's why I couldn't find it. Sorry about that. So it's about a third of the way down the page. Just find the one. Make sure your browser's wide enough. But you want this one that has the navbar, home features, pricing, and the drop-down link. So all I'm going to do is go ahead and copy that to the clipboard with the copy button, handy-dandy copy button. And then I'm going to go down to back to my code and just go right below that heading level 1 and paste it. And that was a lot of code that it threw in there, right? And obviously you can edit this, but mostly what's going on here is it's adding a bunch of tags with Bootstrap specific classes. There's a lot of classes in here. So you can see a class called collapse and navbar toggler icon and all kinds of crazy stuff. Navbar toggler and all that. So this is what we see now. Let me get rid of this one that's finished here. This is what we see now. And you can see, if you can see it on your screen, as I resize that, it becomes responsive as I get down to this spot, right? And then I go bigger and it works like a regular navbar with a drop down too. So pretty good, right? Lots of copying and pasting. Who doesn't love that? It's good for lazy, I don't mean lazy, I mean efficient workers, right? So, okay, so next I think we're going to add a little bit of grid stuff. So let's go to, sorry, I gotta keep resizing this window to see this stuff. I'm gonna go to, back to the documentation and go to layout up near the top. And then there is a section on grid. So the grid system is pretty extensive and pretty flexible. It was rewritten in version 4. See, now we're on version 4.1. You might see something else in your video or in real life when you see this video. They're probably updating it all the time. But when they went to version 4, they went to Flexbox as a basis instead of floats. So they're kind of doing some of the stuff that we did with Flexbox, or we have done already with Flexbox, and they baked it into their system. So here's what this looks like with 3 columns. There is the container that we already have. You add a row here. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So you add a row every time you want a row, and then you add a div for each of the containers here, each of these columns. Then you can add a class, and the classes usually start with COL. You can just use COL if they're all going to be the same size, and it will make 4 equal-sized columns because it's using flexbox. Basically, it's just saying make this row a flex container, and then make each of these things that has a class of call into a flex item. It actually already is a flex item once this is a flex container. The SM, and you see SM and LG and things like that, that is the breakpoint. So what you're talking about here is when do you want this to change from a single column to multiple columns. So SM stands for small. That's one of those breakpoints. So let's see if I can get this to show up without losing my place on the page. So as I get smaller and smaller, you see that where it pops? I say pops. It breaks or it changes. So that is the small breakpoint. That's what the SM means. So as I get to that breakpoint, it goes to 1 column. And when I get past that, it goes to 3. So that's the essence of the responsive part of it. You can also, so that's for equal width columns, right? If you want to make them a specific width, here's the breakpoints again. We can probably skip that. If you want them all equal width, you can even leave off, they will never break. If you just say call, div class equals call, they will never break, I don't think. So if I keep going, see, they're never breaking. They're always going to be crammed in there. So not really responsive. Kind of. I mean, it's flexible, but it's not going to break ever. So if you don't want it to ever break, just put in call. Probably not going to do that, though, very much. Talks about wrapping and things. We're not going to worry about this. We could spend all day just on this page, but there's some flexbox issues with wrapping. So if you want it to wrap, if you add this extra div with a class of W100, et cetera, et cetera. So you can check this out on your own, but I'm not going to get bogged down in this. But I wanted to show you how you can give it certain widths as well. So it's a 12-column system. So if you see a number in the somewhere, that is saying that I want this to be 6 columns out of 12. So that is a half width column, if that makes sense. The first one is going to be, or this middle one's going to be 6, and then the rest is going to be divided by the other 6 columns. So this is going to be 3, 6, 3, if that makes sense. It's a little easier to see when you want to do, let me make this a little bigger. A little easier to see when we specify the exact sizes. I'm looking for an example. No, let's see. Here we go. So here is this is the kind of the older way to do it, but it's more control here. So here we got a row, and this is column SM8. That means this one is going to be 8 columns wide. Remember, there's 12 columns across here. And then this is 4. So column SM4 means this is going to be 4 columns wide at the small breakpoint, or until the small breakpoint. So when I get past the small breakpoint again, and I lost my page, didn't I? Well, not yet. There we go. It breaks and it still goes to 1 column. So the SM part is just a breakpoint, but the number is the number of columns. Sorry, that's jumping up and down. Now I lost it myself. Here it is. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So if you're going to use the number system, you always want to make sure this adds up to 12, everything inside the row. If you're not using the number system, you can add as many of these call SMs as you want. It'll just divide it evenly. So if I put another div in there, it'll just add another one, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, so that's kind of what we're talking about with that. So let's go ahead and add that. I'm going to click copy. And I'm just going to use this the way it is just to show you in real life here. Yeah, so I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to go back to my page, and I want to make sure I get below that nav bar. So I got to still find the beginning of it here. Here's the nav, and then here's the end of it. Remember, in brackets, if you click on the opening tag, it will kind of highlight the closing tag. So here's the end of the nav. This must be the end of the container. So I'm going to go right here and paste in that code that I just copied that has 2 rows in it. The first row has an 8 column wide container and a 4 column wide. The second one is just 3 equal width columns. So let's see what that looks like. There we go. It's a little hard to see. So what I'm going to do, since there's no outlines or colors on anything, what I'm going to do is go up to the top, and add in a style. And we're going to add some more styles in a minute too, but I'm going to go up here and just add a temporary style up in the head. Just so we can see what's going on. I like to do this, you've probably seen me do this before. I'm going to say div. Everything is pretty much a div, or most things. So this will work well. And I'm going to say outline 1 pixel solid and red. So now I can see the outlines. Okay, so that will help us out. So here is the div. Here's that first one with 8 columns, and here's the one with 4, and then here's the one with 3. So as I resize at the small breakpoint, they all break into 1 column, right? But this one is twice as wide as this one because this is 8 columns and that's 4. We could change, which let's do that actually. We could change from the breakpoints, and all we have to do is change the middle of those classes that were added. So let me go down and find those classes. So these are both breaking at the small breakpoint. That's the SM part. Let's say we wanted this to break at, we wanted these 3 columns to go to 1 column at the medium breakpoint. So the suffix for that one is, or the code for that one is MD. So I'm going to go MD, MD there, and MD there. So now these are all equal width columns, but they will break at the medium breakpoint instead of the small one. So let's go out again. So here we are wide, right? And then we're going to go in, and then the bottom one, this bottom row should break first when we get to the medium breakpoint. Yeah. So now we're at the medium breakpoint. These 3 columns have gone, even though they say SM, that's just the text inside of them. They're actually medium, right? We should probably change that to be clear, but we'll leave it. So we've got a single column here, but these are still double column because we haven't gotten to the small breakpoint. When we get to the small breakpoint, they're all single column. So there you go. So there's using different breakpoints, and then also equal width or using the numbered column system. Let's change this to MD so we don't confuse ourselves. I'm going to, because I'm going to get myself confused here. All right, so I think that is good for that. So there's obviously a ton more for the grid. You can, well, let me show you a few things, but we won't do them necessarily. Let me resize this a bit. So you can do different widths of columns, obviously. You can mix and match auto-sized columns and specific sized columns. You can align them vertically. So since we are using, or since Bootstrap is using Flexbox now, you can align things vertically inside them, and that uses classes. So remember, you can do that in Flexbox, and they've just basically come up with a bunch of classes, make that bigger again, that do that kind of thing. So you just add those classes on, and these are all built in. You don't have to write these. These are built into Bootstrap. That's kind of the idea, right? So all these classes are built in to manipulate the vertical alignment. You can also align the boxes inside of the container. All the things you can do with Flexbox. You can have them line up at the beginning of the container, at the end of the container, spread themselves out, justify content different ways. They're just basically taking the Flexbox properties and adding and making classes out of them. So it's not like you couldn't do that yourself, but yeah, makes it a little more convenient. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to show you on this. You can reorder things. I wanted this offset. Let's see. I think I might have to go bigger here. Yeah. So you can also push things over. So offsetting or pushing over. So I can make boxes pushed over by a couple of columns. You can see offset MD4 here. That is pushing some of those columns over. That's why we get these weird spacing. So you can have empty columns or empty spaces. Yeah, all kinds of stuff. We could spend all day on that. So that is a lot of stuff you can do with the grid, and you can take a look at that when you have some more time. The next thing I wanted to add was the carousel. So I'm going to go back to, make this resized again. I'm going to go back to components here on the sidebar, and then I'm going to go to carousel. and go down, and there's a bunch of different versions of the carousel. There's slides only. You can do it with controls like that. You can also do it with indicators like which slide you're on, so you can click and jump to anyone you want. You can also do it with captions. So we'll do the one with captions. Oh, actually, we have to go back to this one. We'll do this one with the indicators, and then we'll add the captions. So I'm going to go here and click copy. So I'm on the one that says with indicators. And I'm going to click copy. And I want to put this actually above those columns that we did. So go ahead and find the end of the nav and put it above where we started those rows for the grid. So here's our grid stuff, right? And whoops. And then we'll just put it right there. And that should work out okay for us. Let me make sure that we, yeah, we probably want to put that inside of a row. So we'll make the nav a row. Well, the nav we'll leave it out of a row. We'll see what happens. And then we want to add a div above that carousel with a class of row. So that helps it figure out where it's going to break at the different breakpoints and things and what should be kind of contained together. So I just put a div of row before the carousel, and I'm going to take the closing tag and go down at the end of the carousel, which is there, I believe, because there's the next row that we did with the grid. And then I'll put that closing tag there. And let's see how that works. I think it's probably okay. We need to see it first. Okay, so I think we've got that in there. So as far as the images go, there's no images. This code that I copied from their site has, they're using their own images. They're from somewhere on the site. So what I'm going to do is go to, take you to a site called placeholdit. Placeholdit.co. It's placeholdit.co. And what this will do, I could have given you images, I guess, to use, but this is kind of a cool system. And there's a bunch of these sites around the web where you can generate placeholder images. So I'm going to click on generate placeholder. And I want one that is 800 pixels. So it says width there. And the height is going to be 400 pixels. And then the background and the font color I'll leave the same. And then for text, I'll just say image. Or Mark's image. How about that? Mark's image. Because it's mine. I made it. Not really, but. And I'm going to click on generate placeholder. And then it gives you the image source. So I'm going to copy this little part of the image source here. Just going to copy this part if I can. Maybe I can't. Let's see if I can grab this part. No, I guess I'm grabbing the whole thing. So I'm going to copy it. I'll have to fix this. Then I'm going to go back to my page and find my images. So here's my carousel again. And then here's my first data. Where is my first image? Here it is. Yeah, source. I'm looking for source. So inside of there, I'm going to put, it ends right there. I'm going to paste that. Now I got to fix that, right, because it has the image tag inside of it and another source. So I'm going to delete that. Oops. It's a little tricky. And that's it, I think. So did that work? Okay. Yeah, so source. Placeholder. Yeah, that should be right. So then I can just take that one. And you see if I roll over it, it actually shows me the image. So it kind of generates these images on the fly for you. I'm going to put that in the source for the second slide. And same thing for the third slide. Okay. So I think that is good. Yeah, so let's take a look at our page now. Oh, we got a slide. Look at that. What? We got a slideshow. We didn't put in our It's acting a little bit weird. Something's going on there. Oh, I got a mistake on the first slide. That's why I'm seeing some text there. That's always a bad sign, right? So let's go back to the first slide. Make this text a tiny bit smaller. It's just too cramped here. And let's see. Ah, there it is. I've got an extra quote right there. So take that out. And this actually should be inside of here. Sorry, that was a little tricky to edit that. And then I don't need this bracket, obviously. I think we're good now. Let's see. Yeah, I think we're good. So hopefully you didn't have that same little copy pasting delete thing I had. But there's my slideshow. If I want to add the captions, let's go back to our Bootstrap helper page and go down to with captions. And all you have to do is add this right here where it says div class equals carousel caption d done md block blah blah blah, and then an h5 and a paragraph. So you want to select this whole, not all this because we already have the items in there. I'm just going to take this little piece and paste that in under the image tag. So it goes right under the image tag. So I'm going to copy that. And where's my first image tag? It's up here, jumping around on me. Let's see. Here it is, right? Yeah, there's the image tag. So it goes right there. And then I'll say image 1 by mark. And I'll actually copy that and put it up the other two images. So here's my second image, right? It's going to go right there. Image 2. And then I'll go to the third image, which is right here. And I'll go right after that and say image 3. All right, I think that is good. Let's see what this looks like. Yeah, so here's the caption. Image 1 by mark, image 2 by mark, image 3 by mark. I think that's it for that. So that's kind of how the carousel works. We probably didn't have to go that fancy on it, but the good part is, it works. It's also responsive, right? Because it's inside of our responsive container. JavaScript is all built in. We didn't write any JavaScript, right? It's in there, but we didn't write any of it. It's downloading it from Bootstrap. All right. So I think that's good on that. The last thing I want to do is add a footer at the bottom. So I'm going to go down to near the bottom after the carousel, after our rows. Here's the end of our container, right? So we're going to go above that. And remember, if I want to make something into a row, I want to add div class equals row. Oops, there we go. And then I'm going to put inside of there, this is the footer. And since I want it to go all the way across, I'm going to add in, I'm going to say div class equals call. And I'm going to give it another class actually called my footer. And I'll tell you why in a minute. And then this closing div has to go after this. Sorry, that was a lot of typing there for that little bit. So we got a div class equals row. That's going to be our row containing our footer. This is the actual container for the footer itself. And we just put call on it. Since we only have one of them, we don't need to put anything else. And it's never going to break, right? Because it's always it's already one column, so we don't have to put a breakpoint like SM or MD or anything like that. And it's 12 columns wide. I could put 12 in there, but I don't need it because it's already going to be 12 by default. And then I added this my footer class because I wanted to show you lastly how you customize your page. That's pretty good. I think we're just about done. So what I want to do is I want to customize the look of this a little bit and also put a background color on here. So I'm going to go back to make a new file. I'm going to say file new. And I'm going to put in a style for H1. So right now my H1 is black, right? But I want to make it red, just to show you how to do that if I want to customize things. So I'm going to say color red. This is just a new empty file, right? And I also want to change the background color of the footer. So I'm going to put in dot my footer, because that's the class I added for that. And I will say, let's do background color. Background dash color, and let's go gray. So I'm going to save this file. I think that's okay. I'm going to save this file as custom.css. And I'm going to save it inside that same Bootstrap site folder. So save. And then I need to link that, right? So I'm going to go, let me open up that thing and go back to the Bootstrap page. And then I'll go to the top. So here is our link to our Bootstrap again, right? That's the one that's styling everything so far, which is giving us that black heading. So I'm going to link that custom style sheet to override that. But to make that work, I'm going to have to put it after this, right? So using the cascade, if you have two equal styles, the last rule wins. So I want my style, my custom CSS style that says H1 color red, I want that to be after or be loaded after this one that says I want it to be black, right, the default one. So I'm going to go here and say below that and say link rel equals style sheet. Oops, spelled it wrong. Type equals text / CSS, and then href. And as soon as I do href, I should see custom.css. There it is. So there is the CSS file. And as soon as I did that, my heading level 1 turned to red, right? And then my footer turned gray. So one little issue with that is if I turn off now, let's go ahead and turn off our red outline. So I'm going to comment this out. And so now you can see that the footer, the background color goes past the edge of everything else. So, you know, if that's what you want, that's fine. You could change it, and actually it does line up with the edge of my my slideshow, which is all right. So I think I'll leave it there, actually. But what I was going to get to is sometimes you might have to change the background color because Bootstrap adds in these extra gutters and things. You might have to change the background clipping on your containers if you want to use background colors so it doesn't look kind of strange like that. Let me just show you what I mean. Let me go back to custom.css, and then I'm going to go inside of the my footer and say background clip, and let's do content box. So since I did that, you see now the background color is only going to the content area and not including the padding, so it's kind of lining up with this. But that actually doesn't look quite right either because our slideshow is a little wider, but I think you get the idea. So I just wanted to show how you can go in and make a CSS style sheet that will override some of the default CSS styles, and there are a lot of CSS styles. One thing don't forget that you can do is if I click on inside of a class and then I do command, well, I see I'm not seeing it there, am I? Yeah, I'm not seeing this. I'm not seeing the external styles. Oh, that's why, because we're using the CDN. So normally, if you click inside of a class name, for example, and you do Command E, you'll see the rules that are affecting that object. But because I think we're using the CDN, which is basically the link to the styles on an external website versus our local styles, I'm not seeing that. So it's not going to help you too much. But anyway, I think you get the idea. So hopefully that was a good kind of intro to Bootstrap and what you can do with it, and I will talk to you again next time. Oh, one more thing I noticed, sorry, which you probably noticed too, or maybe you did, if you were observant. So why is this slideshow wider than the rest of my content? And that's because I didn't put a column class on it, or a div with a column. So the column, some of these classes have built-in padding and spacing between them. So these all have columns around them, I believe, but we didn't put it around, or I didn't put it around. Blame it on me. Didn't put it around the slideshow. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. So right after the row where the carousel is, here's the carousel. Here's the row that we did add, but we probably could also add a div with a class of call. And that will add that spacing that we usually see. So here's the closing tag that brackets just put in. I'm going to cut that and take that down to the end of the row, which I think is around line 90 something. I think it's this guy, right? I think. So let's see, that is, I'm gonna get confusing with where's the end of what, but I'm gonna say it is right here before the row that starts with our columns. So I'm gonna go, well actually it doesn't matter if it's, because there's three of them there at the same time. So you should have three closing div tags. One's for the row, one's for the column, and one's for this, for the slideshow. Yeah, that's it, right? So you have three there in a row. But if we look over here, yeah, it's fixed, right? So everything is the same width. So that's good. So sorry about that, but hopefully that fixes everything. And this time I really will see you again later.